Hello there, and welcome to the second episode of Nothing Else Mattress, our new music podcast that looks to establish what we think are the 100 greatest music albums ever made. First episode, we covered five albums, and from that, I think we voted 2 out of the 5 through. So we're going to cover another 5 tonight, and we'll see how we go on. So before we get into them, just say hello to my friends that are on tonight. So we have Stephen.
Good evening.
George.
Hello there.
John.
Hello.
And Lisa.
Ladies last. Hi.
Ladies last. Ladies last. So let's crack on. We've got 5 to cover tonight. The first one we are going to cover is by Drake, who, using the Rolling Stone Top 100 list, came in at number 95. So let me just read the summary of the reason that they put it on there, and then we can have a chat about it. Okay, Drake and the album's Take Care. The Toronto MC had his creative and commercial breakthrough on Take Care, establishing his image as the champion pappy who can always find a way to overshare, whether in the club or the bedroom. Drake covers both seductive R&B finesse and hip-hop swagger with his longtime producer Noob Shabib, along with guests like Rihanna and Jimi XX. Marvin's Room is a showstopper. Late at night, Drake drunk dials his ex to figure out what went wrong. Hard time or not, Take Care showed what Drake is always best when he bears his feelings in the spotlight. So that's their summary of Drake Take Care. So what did we think of Drake? Who would like to jump off first?
George's posture just says it all.
Okay,
some of the votes came in nice and quick, guys. We don't have to kick them all. So
let me just establish first and foremost: are we getting paid for this, Brian?
Yes.
We are getting paid for it.
No, not yet.
Right, okay. So if we're not getting paid for it, then there's no fucking way in hell I'm listening to any more than 6 or 7 songs by Drake. It was absolutely fucking chronic. And I don't mean chronic as in the Dr. Dre chronic. I mean chronic as in horrendous. I couldn't listen to any more than about 5 or 6, and I had to sack it. But it's definitely, it's not aimed at me. It's not aimed at, middle-aged white man for Bears Den. But after about 4 or 5 songs, I was sort of pining for Metallica.
My God, that bad?
No, it was like a hip hop Coldplay. No amount of cool samples could, save it for me.
Yeah, I struggled.
Yeah, and the thing is, when he's no, and gibbering on about, how fucking high he is or how much he's getting fucked. The pieces of music, the wee tropes and motifs and stuff in between are actually the most interesting pieces on the album. And a girl I work with, I'm not going to mention her name, but she loves this album, and she said that this is an absolute all-time classic. So she's really taken a step down in my estimation after that. I think there's about 14 producers on the album, and between 14 of them, they couldn't make this a pleasurable listening experience for me. So, I'm afraid Drake, as I say, it wasn't aimed at people like me, but I could not get into it. It was derivative, boring, lame, everything that I don't want for hip hop that I get elsewhere from hip hop. I didn't get with Drake, so I'm out, mate.
Okay, George, thanks for that, mate. Who wants to take it on from there?
Well, I'll just agree with George and be quite quick then. I didn't manage to get through very many songs, although it did attract a couple of kids coming in and saying, "Mum, why are you listening to Drake? Why are you listening to Drake?" And then I thought, this is where I know it from. It's usually being blasted out of, like, it's the sort of music they listen to in the shower. Do you know that way? It's just this constant just noise of, I just thought it was really overproduced, really bland, and his voice really annoyed me. And
yeah, there's something about his voice. It wasn't an appealing voice.
I just can't.
So any idea why he would be so big then? Especially this record. It's won so many Grammys. It been billboarded straight to #1, which is almost unheard of for a kind of hip hop artist. So there's obviously something in there that.
Well, there's a market somewhere, but it's just not us. It's
correct.
Okay, that's fine. John.
Brian, I'll stay in here. It's Stephen. I think we've got to come back to our central point here. Is this one of the top 100 albums ever made?
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not correct. which is where I think we're all coming from here, which is the basis of what we're doing. So my lights just went out again, but
That's okay. That's a sign. That's a
But
sign.
I'd go along with George there and Lisa in suggesting that it's. I mean, I do love some hip hop and I do love some rap and what have you, but not this guy. You know, this guy needs a good slap. In my personal opinion.
Metaphorically speaking, of course.
Metaphorically, of course, allegedly.
Thank you. John, can you give us any counterpoint to this?
My only counterpoint is it's utter tosh, which isn't a counterpoint. It is just musically bereft of anything different. You know, I mean, it's hip hop, it's R&B, it's meh. It just left me cold. It's pish, quite frankly.
And would you or others be fans of other things that are connected to this? So, for example, I don't know, Kendrick Lamar's a big fan.
Yeah, Kendrick Lamar's
Yeah.
very interesting.
Rihanna, you know, Ricky Ross. I mean, these guys are generally pretty well respected, and they're all big fans. So, just
Right.
I kind of wonder what it is maybe we're missing. Maybe
I don't know, but I mean, you know.
Maybe it's the lyrics. Lyrically, he's just really, it's all that bragging nonsense, just kind of, it's not even got any character to it, you know, it just seemed to drone on for me.
Talking about the bitches and all
change.
that stuff.
Sorry, John.
You know, he's singing about his bitches and all of this kind of stuff, and that just leaves me cold. 17 songs. Lose half of them, and maybe there's something in there. I don't know, but too many songs, nothing original. And I was reading up about him. He's actually a couple of his uncles played with Sly and the Family Stone and Al Green.
That's right.
Wow.
But none of that.
His dad played drums with Jerry Lee Lewis, so he's you know, got a real sort of musical background. And
So why have you not slapped him about a bit for this then and given him a bit of influence?
yeah, Jerry Lee.
I also, another bit of useless trivial information, but there's a study done a couple of years ago, shows over a kilometre runners listening to Drake run 21 seconds slower than anybody listening. So,
there's another tagline for the podcast. Drake makes you run slower, right?
I just look up. I know useless stuff about useless stuff.
You do,
but that's genius level useless stuff, John.
But we don't have to kick it. I mean, you know, because we don't agree doesn't mean others can. But as our podcast, so you know, I think we call it, don't we?
Yep.
And move on. I think just to finish on John's point, you know, I probably like maybe 5-6 songs on it, but it was 80 minutes long, and I just don't.
I never
really
got to 80, Brian. I never got.
I think you need to be, you know, bordering on genius to carry an 80-minute record. Anyone. And have greatness throughout, you know, that's a big ask, isn't it? But yeah, I'd agree. Not for me,
because maybe I would have liked something on it at some point, but being so restricted for time, I tended to listen more to the ones that, you know, attracted me. So
okay, well, I remember the last time we chatted about aspirationally want to make sure we cover a lot of the genres, so that's another genre we've knocked out. First one, so let's see how we go on from there.
It was a knockout.
Yeah, so that's a definite no, I think, from the team. So let's put that one to bed. Gives us a gap to fill, which I guess is good.
Sorry, Drake.
Sorry?
Sorry, Drake.
No, sorry, Drake. Yeah, I'm sure he'll phone his bitches or whatever. Yeah,
crying into his millions tonight.
Exactly, mate. Cool. So that was 95. 94 was the Stooges Funhouse. So again, talking about the eclectic nature of the list, so I'll read you out the summary from Rolling Stone. With Gary Savvy, ex-Kingsman keyboardist, with Gary Savvy, ex-Kingsman keyboardist Don Gallucci producing their second album, the Stooges made their most fully realised effort despite their collective drug problems. We had a certain purity of intention, Iggy Pop asserted. I don't think we did ever get it from the drugs. I think they killed things. They couldn't kill what he had called the relentless groove the band had on Funhouse. I Stick It Deep Inside, Iggy growls on Loose, one of the album's typically confrontational tracks. Later on 1970, he insisted, ad infinitum, I Feel Alright. And if there's no question, you wouldn't want any of those, whatever he was on. So that is the Rolling Stone summary. So we've got Stooges, number 94, Funhouse. Who's on? Lisa, ladies first.
Me? Absolutely crazy.
Crazy good or crazy bad?
No, I love it. I love it. I
Okay.
love it. It's raw, it's primal, it's just very, for me, it was quite visual because I could just imagine them recording it and just having an absolute riot and party and Iggy crawling about. And I don't know. I mean, sometimes it's not the best music, but it certainly is. Certainly is pretty wild, and they were definitely enjoying themselves. You know.
Are you a Iggy / Stooges fan generally, or is it this record in particular?
Not in particular, no. I mean, I do like some stuff, but I hadn't really listened to that particular album properly before. So, yeah, I thought it was great.
Yeah, cool.
I don't know. I mean, it's almost like it's like the party and all the rest of it, and then by the end, you know, you've got the freeform sax, and it's just all unraveling, and by the end of it, it's just he's sort of wailing and screaming, and it's just I should imagine they probably just wrecked the studio at that point.
Well, they did say one of the genres it was classified as was there's proto-punk, which I think is fairly obvious, but also punk
that's
jazz,
the only
I think,
thing
was
I'd
the other
say
one.
is that there must be so many punk bands that were influenced by the Stooges, definitely.
Yeah, so it's a positive, I think, from you, Lisa.
Definitely, yeah.
Cool. Excellent. Stephen?
Yeah, just stole my thunder there, Brian, when you were talking about proto-punk. That was my initial reaction was, wow, that's a punk record. You know, or it's on the road to being a punk record. And I could see where a lot of bands took influences from, and it feels like a Friday night album to me, if that makes any sort of sense.
Yes.
That's the way it feels like to me. You know, it's not one for listening to the pushing wet Tuesday night. You know, it's a Friday evening, getting ready to go out, blast the album, in my opinion. And I love it thoroughly. I completely love it. It's not a masterpiece, obviously, but it's some piece of work. You know,
Anything you don't like about it? You know, when it was released, it was a bit like some of the Velvet stuff. You know, when it was released, it didn't really get released too much. It was pretty underwhelming, the kind of critical and commercial feedback at the time. It just seemed to be a grower over the years in the 70s. So
it's ahead of its time.
Yeah, maybe that's why it was hard to bear. I know that it was interesting the guy that produced it from the Kingsmen, so that's all that kind of Louie Louie stuff, and you know they were pretty feral, weren't they, when they were going, you know, and they were sort of pretty at it. So I can imagine he's brought some of that in to encourage them just to let loose and do their stuff, and you can hear that they don't give a shit really, do they? You know, so
I think it's a great piece of work. I've been so negative about every album so far we've looked at, but this one hits me right between the eyes. I love this one, and in my humble opinion, it does deserve to be in the top 100 as opposed to fucking Drake. You know, yeah, I'd leave it there personally.
Okay, cool. John?
Yeah, I liked it. Polar opposite of the last one. 7 songs, 36 minutes. You know, so sometimes less is more, I think. It's definitely not a 60s album, a loving hippie thing. It's railing against that, you know, that sort of flowers in your hair. This is dirt and sawdust, and just, I would say raw power, but that's another album, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the one that came after.
Yeah.
I'm not sure we get raw power. I need to go and check that, but
no,
I don't think we do.
Must be on. Must be on.
I don't think it is, mate.
Really?
But I mean, again, we can debate it, of course, but I'm pretty sure it's not. I think this might be the only one we get from the Stooges. I think we might get Iggy Pop maybe somewhere down the line, but no more Stooges.
I think is quite revisionist in that at the time, and probably there'll be other albums from round about then. I can think of one specifically that they didn't sell. They were poorly received, but we see this on the list because it's, I guess, because of the influence it's had, probably in other bands. I mean, if you look at some of the songs in here on this specific album, are songs that have been covered by the likes of The Birthday Party, Depeche Mode, Rage Against the Machine, The Damned.
The Damned. We saw them, John, didn't we? Just recently.
We did, yeah.
Play that.
So I think TVI especially, I can see things in there. Sonic Youth, The Cramps, The Ramones. They take parts of that particular sound that they've had. I think it's a bit bluesy at times as well. I think the song Dirt especially hits that. And again, just some useless facts. Melody Maker that year voted it the worst record of the year, right?
Was Drake?
And
Even though it was the bottom.
They said it is hands down the worst record of the year, right? Fast forward about 20 years later, and they said, no contest, it's the greatest rock and roll album of all time.
I wonder if it was the same guy, John.
Who knows? But I mean, again, you think about when this album's coming out, what was happening in Detroit, all the, the riots, etc., and I think probably quite a lot of what they were writing about, and bands like the MC5 as well would be influenced, by what's going on round about them. It certainly wasn't, as I say, the flower and love that you get in California.
No, absolutely not. It's interesting you mentioned the Ramones influence there, or the sound. I know Joey Ramone quotes it as his favourite album ever.
Really?
Yeah, so you can see there's a kind of direct lineage there through New York Dolls and then into the Ramones and then into punk, of course, which landed. So it's a big, powerful legacy there for sure. So that sounds pretty positive, John. Yeah.
Yeah. It gets a tick for me.
Good man. Thanks for that, George.
I know the reviewer thought it was the worst album in the world, and somebody else said it was the greatest album in the world. I think it's somewhere in between. I think if you took a couple of tunes from each of the three Stooges studio albums, you could probably have one all-time top 10 classic album on its own, just with songs. But this one, it starts like it's like a missile hitting you right between the eyes. It feels like you're right in the middle of Vietnam listening to it. It's like nihilistic, sexual, primal, as Lisa said. Everything about it it's like punk's year zero. This is where it started. This is the absolute genesis of punk. It's like the early warning system for what's coming next. I think the first couple of tunes on the album really hit strongly. And then TVI's the point where it sort of dips a bit and it becomes a bit monotone. And Iggy just, the sort of junky philosopher thing, we're a wee bit thin towards, songs 5 and 6, but it's short and it's sweet and it's absolutely manic. But the latter part of the album, the side 2 of the album, comes across now a bit like a Steppenwolf filler. It does feel like very few of those songs would make it onto anyone's top 10 list, but it's about the feel, and it feels phenomenal. And would it be my favourite Stooges album? I don't know. I feel that all the Stooges albums are flawed, but you can't criticise what the impact they had on the nascent young punks before they were punks. So the stuff that I prefer myself from Iggy is the 2 albums he did with Bowie in '77, The Idiot and Lust for Life. They are phenomenal albums, but they have a little bit of what the Stooges had, but not the absolute sense of danger. So it's a hard one for me. I wouldn't say it was an all-time classic, it was great to go back and revisit it.
And would you put it on the list?
I would say no.
Okay. I think it's 36 minutes long. I think all punk records should be pretty short.
Yep.
Like the whole ethos of the 2-minute song and all that, which I think helps it a lot. I think you're probably right, George. I think, you know, that sound probably maybe does grate a little bit if you let it go too long. Maybe live that would be a different story. When you get the power and all that when you're there, but
Well,
recorded.
Stephen said, I can imagine it
Yeah.
being, you know, like a Friday night record, and you're like, yeah, let's fucking do this. And as
Yeah.
Lisa was saying about, you can imagine being there. And I think being present at an event with the Stooges would have made those tunes explode, and they would have carried a lot more weight. But listening to them cold and dry 50 odd years later, I don't think the songs are there.
Well, there was I think I probably would put it on. I think I would concur with a bit of what George says there, but I think on balance, I think A, it's a very powerful record, and then B, I think its influence has been huge. So I think, you know, for that reason, it probably carries a vote for me. But I agree, it's not, maybe there's not too many perfect records, but I think it's probably a perfect punk record, which is good. There's a couple of things I was going to mention on that before we move on. There was a live album come out last year, which I think was called The Fire of Life, which I missed it when it came out. I don't know why, but I was doing a bit of sort of checking up, and I picked up on it and gave it a listen. So basically it's old recordings from gigs that they played, 70, 71, 72,
Right.
that were recorded straight into the mixing disc.
The desk, yeah.
So there's kind of a lot of bleeding and kind of microphones bursting and stuff like that. So it sounds really good, I think, mainly from LA, and I think maybe Sydney or somewhere. If you get the chance to listen to that, because that does sound like what I imagine the Stooges to be. You know, it's kind of really loud and stuff. I've got another bit of trivia, John, but I know you're my trivia man, so I don't know if you get any other trivia you want to give me here.
No.
You saved any up? No.
No.
No, this one's not even musical. So the bit of trivia I stumbled on was that you know, if you think of Iggy and how he looks and his dress sense or lack of, and all that kind of stuff, that his movement and his looks were the character that Gollum was based on for Lord of the Rings by Peter Jackson.
Seriously?
Wow.
Who was a huge Iggy Stooges fan, but everything about him we thought was just wild and feral and stuff. And
I'd be calling my lawyers if I was thinking on that.
that's obviously, I'm quoting online facts there, George. I don't want anyone to drive into Greenock and sort me out.
Allegedly, Brian. Remember, allegedly.
Always allegedly. Yeah,
You
I
can
think that
see
was
the
me.
light
It was me
through
D
it
that
in
said
there.
that, I think. So, so I think 1, 2, 3. I think we're 4 there, 4 in and 1 not. So that gets a tick and a pass. So Stooges is in Funhouse, and well done them. Cool. 93 is Missy Elliot with Super Duper Fly. Okay, so Missy Elliot made her name as a songwriter behind the scenes, even before she dropped her 1997 debut. But Super Duper Fly introduced everyone to Missy's world with avant-funk cosmic swamp beats from Timbaland. What a team. 2 kids from Virginia Beach, Virginia, dazzling the planet with a playful homegrown sound nobody could imitate. The Rain was the breakout hit, taking an old school and Peebles soul oldie and looping it into a Dirty South jam. Missy sings, raps, giggles, and talks her shit. Super Duper Fly changed the sound of hip hop, but also kicked off a tradition. Every year, Missy and Tim would score the jam of the summer, while everybody else was still trying to catch up with what they did the summer before. So that's the Rolling Stones justification for Missy Elliot being on the list. Who wants to start us on this one?
I'll go first on this one. I actually quite liked it.
Me
The
too.
production was pretty decent. But again, and it is another criticism, 17 tracks on it. And yeah, I do know there's a couple that probably just last a few seconds, but 17 songs. It's also very top heavy in so much as the best songs are at the start of the album. And I think certainly the singles are. And as it went on, I was losing quite a bit of interest in it, but I still enjoyed it. Pass the Blunt is based on Pass the Dutchie as
Nice.
well. So
Mighty Diamonds.
Anyone want to go at that? Pass the Dutchie?
Mighty Diamonds.
That's what I said, Mighty Diamonds.
Mighty Diamonds, yeah.
Sorry.
Pass the coochie.
That's right. I think they would be more impressed with Missy Elliott's version than Musical Youths.
Musical Youths.
Yeah, I mean, I think she flits between various styles in music as well. I think there's a bit of hip hop, there's R&B, bit of dance, bit of soul going on there. So, you know, I think she does that far better, far more interestingly than Drake does. Some cool collaborations in there as well. I thought, yeah, would I listen to it again? Maybe, probably not, but I thought it was okay. I thought it was pretty reasonable.
Yeah, I'll chip in there because I always have my opinion last. I liked this miles better than I thought I was going to. And I thought I'd listened to Drake a couple of times and was a bit nonplussed by it, but I thought this was light years ahead of the Drake record. I thought it had its own personality. Loved the sound of it. She has attitude. She's almost like a female Madonna for me. When she was sort of first starting out, you know, literally doesn't give a shit.
Madonna's not female.
Female
Sorry, a black female Madonna. Did I drop out there? That's another chat, maybe, George. And I think I think you probably, it is a little bit lengthy, John. I think that there's definitely, I wondered whether that was like an extended play thing, but it's not. I mean, back and checked the original, and it's that 60-minute record. It's 60 minutes versus 80, but again, I would still argue it's probably 10-15 too much, you know. But I actually really liked it, and you know, I have had it on again and probably went into a bit more Missy Elliot than I probably would have done, you know, without that, which I guess is a good sign. So I enjoyed it. Who else wants to have a wee go?
Well, I can't say I'd heard much about it before I was asked to have a wee listen for the purposes of this, but I really enjoyed it. I thought it was irreverent, funny, witty, cheeky, sexy, and funky as a mosquito's tweeter, as they say. But it's, I think, quite the people I like in this sort of genre. I really like Timbaland's production on this. He's from Virginia. Missy Elliott's from Virginia, and I don't know if it's Timbaland's cousin is Pharrell Williams, and Pharrell's from Virginia as well. So there must be something in the water there, because I really like Pharrell stuff. But this album was, I was out driving last week and I stuck it on Spotify and I had it playing, and I was prepared to be turning it off after a couple of tunes and sacking it, but I listened to the whole thing and I really enjoyed it. It was 25, 26 years ago, whatever it was, it came out, and it still sounds really fresh. I liked the nods to the past, where the Willie Mitchell samples, you know, there's an Eddie Floyd sample in there as well. But she did it her and Timberlake did it in a far more imaginative way and creative way than Drake did. So even when they are, you know, it's Busta Rhymes comes in with that profane opening, I don't get the feeling like it's like, oh, knock it off, mate. It felt as if he was heralding the start of something, like the start of a big night out kind of thing. Yeah. I enjoyed it, so I would have said, yeah, this is definitely a good use of those grooves and a cracking example of the genre.
Yeah, I read a quote just on that. I think it was, I might have been All Music, I can't remember, but it was somebody who did a reappraisal on it, and they said it's arguably the most influential album ever released by a hip-hop artist. She is to rap what Prince was to R&B. So whether you agree or disagree, but you can see how that's been taken by some people, you know.
Well, if you think about Public Enemy, Takes a Nation of Millions, and NWA, Straight Outta Compton, and things like, you would say they were probably more at the Chronic, Dr. Dre. You'd say maybe they were more influential, but as an argument, you could argue for Missy Elliot here, you know.
I think they were arguing on her female impact, because it'd been a very male-dominated genre, hadn't it?
That's what struck me about it. I thought it was really quite refreshing because, you know, it was so much fun, had so much character, and I thought it kind of gets away from your usual kind of misogyny, rap, and although she did a bit of the bragging, I'm the best rapper and the best singer and all that, she still doesn't take herself that seriously. It's fun, and she's actually, although most of the album is rapping, she's actually got a really good voice. And one thing about it was that I wish I could hear her sing more in it, because I really do think she's got a good voice. And I mean, I love that song, The Rain, which samples, is it Ann Peebles?
Ann Peebles, yeah.
It's on The Rain.
And that I think that song's absolutely fabulous. I mean, I know it's the production and everything, it's the whole thing, but no, I just really liked it. I thought it was really fun. I really enjoyed listening to it. I wanted to dance,
Yeah, it's a pretty tasty.
I think this came around the same kind of time as the Fugees with
The Score.
The Score, yeah. I prefer this.
Right, sorry.
I prefer this. I got a better vibe from Missy Elliot than I did from Lauryn Hill. I think Lauryn Hill's a phenomenal singer, but this hit home with me more than the Fugees and Lauryn Hill, who were around at the same kind of era doing the similar kind of stuff. This sort of worked more for me.
I think we'll get a chance to chat about Lauryn Hill somewhere down the line. I'm sure she's
no doubt.
She's up there. Stephen, you got anything you want to add to that, mate?
Yeah, I'd never heard this lady until this week, to my eternal shame. But and I first heard this album out trudging on the streets of Greenock with a dog, and it blew me away. I thought it was absolutely fantastic, and I'm going to go digging for more. Top 100, I'd say possibly, yeah, definitely. That's a possibly, definitely.
It's interesting because we did those Twitter polls as we were sort of rolling through them. So when we did, so Drake was 100% no on Twitter.
How many votes though? How many votes did it get?
I don't know, 15, 20 votes, something like that.
Okay.
So it was enough to have a view on it, I guess. Yeah. The Stooges, I think, was 88% yes, with about, you can have similar numbers, I guess. Missy Elliot was 50-50. I think it's the only one really we've had, which is which they haven't called, which I guess maybe touches on some of the chat that we've been having here. So,
well, again, I think that possibly comes back to the fact was it George that said this album's nearly 25 years old? Was that?
Yeah,
it
must
right?
be about
97, July 97.
So it's now becoming a bit of a legacy. It's aging, if you pardon the expression. But so I said it's news. It was a new one to me. But I'm going to go back and revisit our back catalogue and maybe have a wee listen. I thought I loved it. To be perfectly honest with you, I loved it.
Yeah, me too, mate. Okay, what we thinking? Are we keen to put this one on, or are we?
Yeah,
it's an in for me, definitely.
Okay, George is in. George, John.
Yeah.
Yes, keep it in.
Keep it in, mate. Lisa.
Yes, please.
Yeah, I'd be swayed to put it in as well. I mean, I'm sure there's other great hip hop records to come, but it has got something about it for sure.
Absolutely.
I managed to, but half the fun of doing this is it makes you drop in and watch stuff like the Anvil documentary, John, which I've now had the pleasure of watching. It was everything you said it would be. It's brilliant, mate.
It's good, isn't it?
Brilliant. And I actually came across her. She played the halftime Super Bowl show a few years ago with Katy Perry. Now, Katy Perry's fine. She's doing Katy Perry stuff, right, which is fine, but Missy Elliot just blows her away. She comes on and does like maybe a 3 or 4 minute segment in the middle, get you freak out and one or two other things, and just bordering on genius. She just absolutely smashes it and then gets off again. So I think there's definitely something about her. She's been very quiet sort of recently. I think she's sort of been much more sort of behind the scenes now than she was before, but I guess she's maybe made a mark. But this album as a debut album is just, I think it's outstanding. So
I think she was a singer-songwriter as well, wasn't she? Before she started doing her own stuff, writing for Destiny's Child and Alea, amongst others. So,
who also appears on that album, doesn't she, Alea?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, a whole bunch of them. Yeah, she's there.
Yeah. We can
So-
draw a line from her to, you know, the ones who have followed her, like Beyonce. You know, you can definitely draw a line from Missy Elliot to, you know, Beyonce, the
And just
Destiny's
dropping,
Child stuff.
you absolutely can, George. And just dropping back the way before we finish, I read something from her and Timbaland as well that says they were big into some of the post-punk stuff because they like the attitude, Pill, Certain Ratio, Talking Heads.
Wow.
So
Okay.
they love that kind of feel and as I say, kind of energy that came out of those, not necessarily the sound. And you can see there's a bit of that kind of edgy thing that comes in there as well, which
Yeah.
is really good. So cool, lovely. That's a slam dunk in. Thank you very much. Okay, number 92 is Jimi Hendrix, or the Jimi Hendrix Experience, Axis Bold as Love. Okay, Jimi Hendrix's first album remade rock and roll with guitar magic that no one had ever dreamed of before. His second album was just plain magic. It started with some musings on extraterrestrial life, then goes really far out. Jazzy drumming, funky balladry, liquid guitar solos, dragonfly heavy metal, and the immortal Stoner's maxim from If 6 Was 9. I'm the one who's got to die when it's time for me to die, so let me live my life the way I want to, quote unquote. All over the album, Hendrix was inventing new ways to make the electric guitar roar, sing, talk, shriek, flutter, and fly. And with a delicate little wing, he delivered one of rock's most cryptic and bewitching love songs. So that's the review from Rolling Stone. What do we think of Jimi Hendrix Experience, Axis Bold as Love?
He only did 3 studio albums in his life, and this was the middle one. Are You Experienced came before, and Axis Bold as Love came, was that 67, I think?
December
late
67, George.
late 67, and then the next one came about 7 or 8 months later. So I think they did 3 albums in 15 months, and they were each of them incredible in their own way. Far more adventurous than his debut album. You can tell Hendrix, Redding, and what's the name of the other fella?
Mitch Mitchell.
Mitch Mitchell. They were absolute sponges for everything that was going around, because within about 2 or 3 songs here, you can hear Dylan, you can hear Donovan, you can hear elements of the Isley Brothers and Ike and Tina Turner, both of whom he played with himself. I don't think it's his definitive studio album. I think that's Electric Ladyland. But there are some killer tracks on it, especially Little Wing, as you mentioned, and Spanish Castle Magic. Those are phenomenal tunes. But it set a template for the psychedelic rock thing that, you know, sort of exploded after this. But if you don't have Hendrix and the Hendrix Experience, then you don't get what we know as Led Zeppelin and everything that came with it. It's technically brilliant. They basically inventing a genre. You know, it's the psychedelic rock before this with Floyd and the Beatles and the like, but this is different. There's funk in this, and it's a little pastoral, and it's phenomenal stuff, and it absolutely delivers something that no other band at the time could have delivered. And it absolutely fucking shits on anything Eric Clapton did without Jack Bruce. So Hendrix, as a player, as a musician, as a visionary, incredible. Still don't think it's as good as Electric Ladyland. So if Electric Ladyland's not in the top 100, then we're going to have some serious fucking words. But this is still phenomenal, phenomenal album.
I'm sure we'll come on to whether it's good enough or not, but all 3 of his albums are in the top 100 at the moment. So yeah, they're all there. So I think you're saying are you saying it's a yes, George?
Oh, it's a yes for me, yeah.
It's a yes. Okay, mate. Okay. Chaz Chandler produced, of course, from the Animals and then latterly Slade.
I know they had a few issues with Chaz Chandler was very much old school.
Yeah.
Just wanted to get the take done, whereas Hendrix at this point had started to let's see if I can get a better take. Let's see where we can take this. Let's see if we can improvise and experiment here. And that probably pissed Chas Chandler off a wee bit, and they ended up having the break. And there's one of the songs that Noel Redding sings on this, and it sounds like The Who, but a better version of The Who than The Who.
Yeah.
Yes. So fine.
Which one is it, John?
Yeah.
So fine.
She's so fine.
She's
Yeah.
so fine. Really good. It's probably the most commercial sounding song, I think, on the album.
Yeah.
Quite psychedelic as well.
What's your take on the record, John?
I really liked it. I think, you know, even the first song, if you can call it that, it's very, very innovative. It's sort of bouncing about stereo, you know, over here and stuff like that. And I just think, I'm guessing there was nobody else doing this kind of thing at that time. You know, it's bluesy, but his guitar playing is just off the wall. It's just phenomenal. But he doesn't overstep the mark with it. You know, you could see somebody maybe getting a bit too self-absorbed in that talent. He doesn't. He
was
just
a very graceful guitar player,
yeah, just gets it right. And, you know, you can see guys like John Squire for Stone Roses, particularly in Stone Roses' second album, that's got Hendrix all over it in terms of, you know, the style of guitar that he played. And I think, you know, the Beatles loved him, didn't they? And I think the Stones did as well. They were just absolutely mesmerised by him. I did notice he was actually born in Seattle, which is obviously the home of grunge music.
Yeah.
And I kind of think, Christ almighty, if he was still kicking about in the mid-90s, can you imagine? You know,
he also played a left-handed Telecaster like Kurt Cobain.
Yeah.
They both played left-handed Telecasters.
Yeah. He served his time as well. I think he was
left-handed Stratocasters. I beg your pardon, no Telecasters.
He played in quite a lot of bands, you know, before he.
Right.
I guess as they all do, right? But he was a journeyman, you know. He got guitar for hire until he decided to do his own thing, which you can't really imagine him doing anything else now that he's done it. And he was loved the Beatles and was loved by the Beatles. There's actually a story that when they released Sgt. Pepper's, which obviously was a big thing, so they did some sort of launch day thing. And that night, Hendrix was playing a gig somewhere in London, and the Beatles went along to see him. And he came out playing Sgt. Pepper's, Lonely Hearts Club Band and all that. He'd learned it with the band in like a couple of plays and went and played 2 or 3 of the songs from the record.
It was the following night. They went, I think they released it on a Thursday, and they went to this club in St. James in London, and he'd learned the whole album in a day, basically. Yeah. And they were blown away. They were like, "This guy is the fucking king. He is
indeed
the ultimate."
So, John, sorry, mate, anything else you want to add to that?
Yeah, you know, he seemed to be a real pioneer. You know, he could just do things that, you know, other people could never even, you know, imagine, I guess. The interesting fact, he was actually rejected by Seymour Steen,
right?
The famous music manager, and Andrew Lou Goldman knocked him back as well. Keith Richards had recommended him to do them, and they knocked him back. So that's, I think, when Chas Chandler came in. But that was a big mistake, wasn't it?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And what was your view? I think I also read somewhere, did they not leave the master tapes in a taxi or something?
Yeah, he had to re-record part of this album, I think. It may have been a couple of tunes, but he had to re-record them. And he was never happier, as happy with them as he was with the originals. So it was the album could have been even better, I believe. So.
Okay. So is that a yes from you, John?
Sorry.
Sorry, mate.
Yes.
Yes. Sorry, I missed that there. Thank you. Lisa.
That was my fault because I interrupted. Sorry, John. Nobody can touch Hendrix as far as I'm concerned. I just love it. I was basically dragged up on Hendrix. You know, it was always getting played in the house. My dad was a massive Hendrix fan, and I know I never have the good trivia stuff like you guys, but I've always got the personal, you know. So very, very quickly, you know, it was always in the house. My dad was a GP, And I remember coming home from school one day, and I never really went home for lunch, but I took a friend home for lunch and was absolutely mortified to walk in the door. And my father was standing listening to Hendrix playing air guitar. And I mean, you know, when you're a teenager, you're like, oh my God, how embarrassing. But I kind of get it now, you know. But he's just a genius, an absolute genius. How all his music. I mean, I don't know if it's his best album, but I just love all of his music, and I just feel that it's just dead bluesy, raunchy. You know, when he gets on to Little Miss Lover, I just love that. You can't stop yourself from moving to that. You know, and as John said, his skill on the guitar, he really could take the piss with it. You know, like Metallica did, and they didn't even have the real skill, as far as I'm concerned. But he doesn't. It's just he just gives you a wee flavour of what he can do, and gets you down.
I think it's 39 minutes the whole album. So I mean, there are quite a few guitar licks in there, but as you say, he's not kicking it out. So
and obviously
managed to keep them.
With Little Wing, I mean, everyone knows that one. I mean, it doesn't matter how many times I listen to that. As soon as it starts, it's the goosebumps. I get goosebumps here on end. You know, there's just something about it, and maybe that's something to do with memories and having listened to it for such a long time. But yeah, I can't stop myself. I want to like fling my hair about when Hendrix is on. You know, it's real raunchy.
Don't mind us, Lisa. Don't mind us at all.
I've been known to at James's 50th. The Bold Skin and I did all the twirls to cross town traffic. You missed that.
Maybe get that the next time we get that record on the list.
Yeah, for James's 60th, you need to do Foxy Lady with the Wayne's World version.
Absolutely.
Maybe get Skin on as I've guessed for the next Hendrix one.
I'll make a wee note of that.
I know he's a fan.
That's a great shout. I had him lined up for Bowie as well, so we'll see what we can do about that. So yeah, you sound like a yes there, yeah?
Okay. Yeah,
I thought that. Stephen, are you going along with the guys here? What's your take?
Very much. I've got a confession to make in that I've got a massive gap in my music education when it comes to Hendrix, and that I came to him very late. And so I'm still, it may sound a strange thing to say, but I'm actually playing catch up with him. You know, for some bizarre reason, I just seem to have skipped it completely until the last couple of years. So I'm now playing catch up, and I'm loving it. I can't believe it's been so long, and I don't know how I've missed it. And short point long, blah 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 blah. Yeah, 100%'s got to be in.
Okay,
has to be. It's simply too good not to.
Well, we've got 4 in. I'd be minded not to put this in, right? And but it doesn't matter because 4 are in, right? I think of his three albums, I think it's easily the weakest of the 3 albums that he did. I think the first one's got that kind of energy and power and whatever you want to call that. A debut album has. It's a bit raw, but it just jumps out at you. And you're right, as George said earlier on, sorry, I think Electric Ladyland's fantastic. I just feels to me like a bit of an offshoot from the first album. 1 or 2 songs left over, he recorded in a rush. I'm happy it's in, but I think of the 3 he done, I think it's the weakest of the 3. But what do I know?
Move on.
And 4 of you are in, which is good. And the only other thing I had, which was interesting, was at the beginning of '67. So just when all this is happening, Chaz Chandler got him a support slot on an American tour. Any idea who he was supporting?
Here they come, walking down the street.
He lasted, I think, 3 or 4 gigs supporting the Monkees, and a decision was taken that it wasn't quite the right fit. Albeit the Monkees became very cool, of course, as they kept going, but at that time they were still very much in that pop world. And he moved back to England, and the rest is history, as they say. So Hendrix is in. He didn't get a vote on Twitter. He was 60% no on Twitter. But
really?
Yeah, I think more to do with the other records. I think, George, they're all big fans. maybe just they weren't sure whether there was 3 Hendrix records to be in the top 100, but it's in now for us, which is cool. And we're good for time, so we've got one more to go, which was number 91, which is Darkness on the Edge of Town by Bruce Springsteen. So, Rolling Stone, when I was making this particular album, I just had a specific thing in mind. Springsteen told the Rolling Stone it had to just be a relentless, a barrage of a particular noise. His obsession on this album is a common one. How to go on living in a mean world when your youthful dreams have fallen apart. Springsteen sang with John Lennon-style fury as he chronicled the working class dreams and despair of Prove It All Night and The Promised Land, as well as his definitive car song, Racing in the Street. After the youthful exuberance of Born to Run, Darkness was the first sound of Springsteen's hard-won adult realism. Bruce Springsteen, Darkness on the Edge of Town. Stephen, let's start with you, mate, because we'll be coming to you last. What do you think?
I think it's brilliant. As you know, if you turned me on to Springsteen in the last 10 years, again back to Hendrix, again I had a big gap where I missed the likes of Hendrix, Springsteen, but I'm now coming back towards them, and I'm going through Springsteen's back catalogue, and I think this is an absolutely wonderful piece of music. The whole thing starts.
Because why do you think that, Stephen?
It just struck a chord with me. I think it's a realism. It's no. We'll go back to the start and slagging Drake off for his bitches and hoes and all that shit. This is real. You know, this is proper. And I don't know if it's me, working class and all that stuff and all that bullshit, but it always struck a chord with me from the first time I heard it, and I could go downstairs and play it right now and love it again. I think it's a wonderful piece. No argument from me at all about this being in.
Okay.
It just hits all the right notes, if you'll pardon the expression.
Thank you. Take that. I think we'll go to Lisa next then for a bit of light and shade. Lisa, what's your take on?
I knew you were going to pick me.
So remember, guys, I think I mentioned this when we started, that we've all got one veto, right? Remember that. So one time for any record that's on the 100 list at the moment, one of you can either vote the album in or vote the album out, and that's it. But you only get to do it once. So just reminding you've got that option.
Okay.
So we just teed that up for you.
I know. It wasn't that bad. No, I just can't get into Springsteen. I'm sorry. I feel like I should be ashamed or something, but you're talking about the realism and everything. I can't even get past listening the music, and his voice really, I don't know, there's just something about his voice really grates in my nipples. I'm sorry. I just,
there's another quote.
Sorry. I can't think of any other way to describe just how it just irritates me. I've tried to listen to it, and I've tried to be a wee bit more kind of, there's some sort of block with me, and I don't know whether it's from when I was younger. I wasn't really into Springsteen, and you know, they played it a lot in the prefect's room at school, and that would kind of annoy me as well, because I was a Smiths girl, and you know, I don't know, it's his voice. I feel as if he's straining all the time, and these higher harmonies that almost just don't sound like they're good harmonies. I don't know, there's just something wrong about them. Sorry.
Okay. Is there any Springsteen? So parking this record, is there anything at all that, you know, would there be other albums that you potentially warm to, or is it just him?
Well, do you know what? I'm actually going to go and listen to a bit more. Okay. Because as I say, I think I do have a bit of a block with Springsteen, so I've just not really listened, you know, to full albums or whatever. So I really think that I should try and, you know, he's so world renowned. It can't just be me.
Well, you know, it's all a matter of opinion, isn't it? So.
Well, no, sorry, I can't be the only one that can't get into it. But I just want to switch off. So
you're warming
up. His new album is torture, incidentally, if anybody's.
Was that the covers thing that he done?
Oh, it's awful.
Yeah, I've heard better, to be honest.
Yeah, totally rubbered it.
He's phoning it in, isn't he? To be fair. So
Anyway,
I'm
sorry, it just doesn't do it for me.
I'm putting you down as a maybe, Lisa. Yeah.
It's a no.
Well, I think we've got another
George.
new title for the show. Grating my nipple ends.
George, what were you thinking, mate?
Yeah, it's very similar in theme and in tone to Born to Run, which I really like. Especially Badlands and the title track. I didn't get the euphoric rush with this album that I got when I listened to Born to Run, or but it's a good Springsteen album. If you like Springsteen, it's a pretty good album.
So a wee bit of context on that then. So from Born to Run to this one, I think there was a 3-year gap between them. So he's got this dispute with his manager that ends up the courts and stuff like that. So he's recording as he's doing that, but obviously he's not in a particularly good place because he's a bit kind of unhappy, and you feel that, right? But also he's fully aware of punk happening in the UK. So in between the two records, of course, through the Ramones and then into Clash, Pistols, etc., he in effect discovers punk. So although he could never do a punk album, but that story, if you want, that genre, that sort of street level attitude thing becomes very much brought into his sort of sound and his thinking. And he was kind of pretty alone doing that at the time in America. It was all still pretty American, kind of 70s MOR rock and stuff. Yeah. So you can see why he's changed, but you're right. It does is a bit of a different sound to Born to Run. So
it's not quite get the same. It doesn't hit for me as well as Born to Run hit, and maybe the legal dispute had something to do with that. There's a couple of familiar touches and motifs on it. Other things that you would normally get in a Springsteen album, like Clarence Clemens saxophone and Roy Bittan's piano motifs, and Max Weinberg's crashing mighty drums, and Bruce's own biblical allegories and those kind of things you find on most good Springsteen albums. But given a choice, I would go for The River over Darkness and the Edge of Town. Because I think the songs are better. I think he's I think he was in a better place musically for The River than he was for Darkness. So I would say to Lisa, if you are going to start somewhere, just skip this album, go on to The River, and see if that works for you. If it doesn't, then you're never going to get Springsteen. But
don't tell her it's a double album, though.
No, don't tell him. Keep that line quiet, John.
Yeah, it's only one album on Spotify, John.
I will definitely give it a go. Definitely.
I would say this about Darkness. Even a fair to middling Springsteen album is light years ahead of any fucking Rush album. So
I thought we were going to go a whole podcast there without referring to the great
Rush?
band.
No.
I'll be using my veto for Rush one day. And there are another 2 records from Springsteen in the top 100, but The River isn't one of them. Interestingly,
that's surprising. That is surprising. I thought that The River's Born to Run's a great album. Born to Run will definitely be in there.
Yeah, it is, but The River isn't. So maybe again that'd be one for us to maybe chat through about whether we think that's in or out. I mean, I think one of the kind of positive things about it is that it's relatively short. It's about 42 minutes. So again, not kicking the arse out it, whereas The River is quite long, although it's a great record, to be fair.
But the thing like Hendrix, though, I don't want to rip on him too much, but he basically created a genre. He created this working class rock American ideal. He's like Jimi Hendrix and very few other people. He created his own genre, which got to take your hats off to him for that.
Well, the Americana side of what he does is very much where sort of Wilco and REM and stuff all went. That kind of gritty, new edgy stuff. But he seemed to carry a lot of that. And as I say, that punk ethos is very much in there as a kind of attitude, maybe not necessarily as a sound. So are you in or out, George? What's your take?
I wouldn't have this in the top 100. No.
Okay, no bother, mate. Stephen's a yes, Lisa and John. John, what we got, mate?
Well, just before that, see, you're talking about vetoes.
Yeah.
Do we veto your veto?
Is that if I put Rush forward? Is that what you're saying?
I'm going to gang up on you.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course you can.
Yeah, I would echo quite a lot actually what George has said. I think it's a decent album. I probably wouldn't have it in my top 5 Springsteen albums. I don't know how this album passed me by, because I had the first 3 albums, didn't have this one, and then I had the Reverend Born in the USA. So I was a bit surprised about that, and I just don't think there's any standout tracks in it. You know, so if you think about all those other albums, they've all got at least one standout track. I mean, Badlands is quite good, and I think Darkness and Edge of Town, so the first song and the last song, probably stand out the best, but I don't think there was much in the way of great substance in between it, quite frankly. He did, though, write tons of songs during this period. I think he wrote something like 70 songs, some of which actually end up on the river, and some of them, Because the Night, he wrote during this period of time, gave Patti Smith, and Fire.
Sisters, yeah.
Fire, that's right, George.
Sisters, also Robert Gordon, a famous rockabilly musician. So that, you know, shows that he was still very prolific during that period. And it's interesting, you know, I guess across the other side of the pond, punk's going on, and, you know, was he taking much in the way of influence on that? Not sure. But funnily enough, it was the NME Album of the Year.
It was.
At the time as well. So,
do you know what number 2 and number 3 were?
I don't know. You're going to tell me?
I am, mate. Number 2 was All Mod Cons by The Jam. And number 3 was This Year's Model by Elvis Costello.
Yeah, 2 good albums.
So you can see that, you know, being a very American artist in that punk world, but, you know, NME was pretty edgy at the time, and, you know, he still seemed to be able to get in and get that kind of critical acclaim. But I would concur with a lot of that. It's a very hard album to love. It takes so many listens. It's the absolute opposite of Born to Run, say. But you whack it on and you'll love 4 songs in the first play, pretty much. It's very hard to get into, to be honest. It's quite kind of deep and dark and stuff. Production's really dense as well on it, so maybe it just takes time to get it or not. So I'm guessing from your take on that, John, you wouldn't be a yes, or?
It's a no for me. I think there are far better Springsteen albums that, well, based on what you're telling me, aren't even on this list.
No, not at the moment, no. And obviously I would have voted it in, but you know, we are a democracy, so that's 3 in and 3 out and 2 in, so that one doesn't go in. Kind of a couple of PSs to it, I guess, would be, I think you mentioned about 70 tracks there, so it's actually fully recorded. I think it was 58, 59 tracks. And talking about referencing some things you could watch, they ended up doing a documentary of the making of the album called The Promise, which also subsequently became an album that he released.
Right.
And it's well worth an hour, 70 minutes of your time. It's fantastic. Partly because some of the records on it you won't have heard before, because this is a lot of the stuff that came out on the other kind of unreleased side, which is much more poppy and sort of R&B and stuff like that. And partly because he was a box of frogs at the time. He was such a bad space that he was a pain in the arse, you know, to be recording around, and that it kind of captures that when he's doing it, and not particularly easy watch in some places, to be honest. But
as we're talking about Springsteen, as we're still on him, have any of you guys seen the Broadway show, the one-man Broadway show?
Yeah,
I've
seen it.
Absolutely. Yep.
I thought it was phenomenal. I thought it was incredible.
Yep, agreed. Yeah, I was very close to getting a ticket for it, George, and it kind of sums my life up. Went to America for 3 weeks and managed to get 5 or 6 days in New York, and Mrs. Davison had given me a waiver to get a couple of tickets and go and see him at any price when we got to New York, and it was 4th of July celebrations, and it was closed for 3 or 4 days. It was a 1-year run, and it shut for 3 or 4 nights when I was there. So that just sums my life up, mate. But I'm going to see him in Rome.
if Lisa hasn't seen that, I would recommend maybe watching that, because it would put a bit of flesh on the bones of Springsteen and his story, and it's a phenomenal document.
Yeah, and I've got one more PS before we close up for tonight. It was quite interesting because it touched on somebody else I love, who's Lloyd Cole in the Commotions. And somewhere, can't remember where I read it, but he said that the sequencing on Darkness was kind of how he saw a perfect album to be, not necessarily the songs, but he thought the sequencing was great. And I think there's 10 songs on Darkness, 5 on either side.
Nice.
And the 3 Lloyd Cole albums that he released with Commotions have all got 10 songs on them, 5 either side.
Okay.
And that was kind of one of the things that he sort of took out of that, which was quite interesting. And I love Lloyd Cole, so I'm thanking
So
Springsteen
John and
for
I
that.
were sitting next to Lloyd Cole without actually realising we were sitting next to Lloyd Cole.
Where was that?
Did Lloyd realise he was sitting next to you and me, though, George?
That's why he chose to sit where he sat.
Where was that, George?
Straven at the Frets.
Oh, the Threats, right?
It was one of the first Frets.
Right. He launched it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It might have been the first one.
Yeah.
And John and I were sitting there gabbing away. This guy comes and sits beside us. We're like, yeah, okay. And we were just chatting away. And he gets up and he walks, sits on stage, and we're like, oh, fuck. That was Lloyd Cole, wasn't it? So,
Did you have your guitar with you, George?
no. That's retired.
Okay, so Springsteen's out. Twitter voted him in, so we're kind of similar to Twitter, but not the same as, I guess that's the way it should be, really. So we've got, summarise that, so we'll get Drake out, Stooges, Missy Elliot and Jimi in, and Springsteen out. So 3 out of 5 this week, which is one better than last time. So I don't know if the albums are getting better or we're getting more alignment, I don't know. So that was good. So again, just an hour or so there. That's us done 10. So we'll do 5 on the next one, which I think are Neil Young, Erykah Badu, David Bowie, Miles Davis, and The Doors are the next 5. So again, pretty different. So good luck listening to those. And as I say to you, the one after that, we'll start to look at some nominations from all of us for albums to put back on the list. And I guess that's where the fun might start. So any more for any more? Sorry, Stephen?
Fighting, you mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, fisticuffs and all that. Okay, guys, so listen, thank you very much for that. Really enjoyed it. And I look forward to us doing it all again soon. All righty.
Thanks, Brian.
Right, take
Cheers,
care,
Brian.
everyone. Stay safe. All the best.
Cheers, boys and girls.
Right.